Yeah, coming up with unusual, unique compositions to keep things interesting for yourself can be tough, but over time I've come up with all sorts of different novel approaches to keep things interesting. I put up drawings on eBay every week, and a lot of times I don't have an idea in my head, but visualization is one way to start, where basically you see it in your head and try to render it, or you use a memory, or you imagine a scene with real people, actors that you have cast, or something like that, and you set that up. For example, one technique I use is a wrestling ring, where I place the figures in the ring, and then erase that stuff. Now, there's another technique I use where I will take the sheet of paper and draw a diagonal line. And then what I'll do is I'll attach things to the line and it creates a compositional angle. But what happens is that when the viewer sees the picture, they're not aware that the line was there, but basically everything has been built along that line, right? Now, another way, something like this might appear a little more flat in terms of a composition. Another way to approach compositions is figuring out which objects are closer and which ones are further away, right? So something is closer, something is further away, and something that helps with that, I have sheets like this with perspective grids, and I'll use a light box, put a sheet of paper on top, and literally begin to, because it gives you a sense of depth and dimensionality, whereas a piece of paper is flat, it can help you to create a dimensional scene. Here's a drawing that I did that way. I used that grid, and you can see that it's got a good bit of depth to it. And I think there's some more in there too, but I won't go into that. So that's another method. One that I use is called a parabola. Parabola is basically a curve, as if you threw a baseball and then it dropped off at the end. So it curves and then ends like so. But that line is very interesting. So you can draw a figure on that line, and you'll wind up with a sort of a gracefulness, natural quality to it that you might not have otherwise. Here's a sample of that. See, here's the line coming up in the head, it helps the expression and the mood that the figure is conveying. And there again, someone who saw this drawing would probably never think that it was based on a simple parabola. So not only can the parabola be used for a standing figure like that, you can reverse it. You can use it all kinds of different ways to create something new and interesting. Now there's another way that I've used is to literally just begin scribbling randomly. Sometimes I will use acrylics or watercolors to create abstract shapes, and it's like I had nothing clearly in mind when I was doing these. I looked at this later and I can see 4 crows standing on branches and put a figure over here, and boom, water. And you got an illustration that you wouldn't have come up with any other way. So the abstract to realism is another approach. Now also, let's see, Oh, here's one. Don't know if I have the piece of paper ready for this, but basically, if you get a large piece of cardstock that you can't see through, then cut a hole in it, like so. A neater hole than this, I tore this. But basically what you can do is begin drawing something. A head, you know, and then come over here and draw some more. And then what'll happen is you can't see what came before. So you will do novel things that you wouldn't have done otherwise. See? Now, compositionally, it's like, this might or might not be interesting, but because I isolated, it's coming from a different place. So that's one technique. Another technique is drawing upside down, believe it or not. And what happens when you draw upside down? It taps into parts of the brain that you wouldn't have used any other way. Now, things may not come off as necessarily very realistic at first, but you can always alter that and improve things. Here's another one, which is high contrast and using a lot of shadows, a lot of blacks. What is the other one? Oh, yes. Now, a lot of compositions are based on a geometric grid. And you notice I'm going from center to corner, and so on, to create these lines. And this goes back to classical art centuries, and basically if you place things according to these lines, you will get a geometrically interesting composition because of the way that it relates to the edges of the picture, right? Now, having said that, you know, in certain scenes, you want to make sure that you may want to make sure that you know where the horizon is. Horizon line can be very important too. Now, another way of thinking about things is there's a very good book. I can send you a PDF of it called The Command to Look. And it was written by a photographer. I'm pretty sure Frank Rosetta saw it. And it explains things in pictures that basically will attract attention and keep the attention. One is diagonals. So if you compose, like say figures, based on diagonal lines, you're going to get a dynamic composition. Another method described in the book is restraint. And restraint could be someone holding someone, a snake wrapped around someone, someone holding or grabbing someone else. Those things are very likely to get attention. Now, let's see, there's some other ones. large versus small. And you see this played out a good bit in fantasy art where there'll be a little figure here and then the giant monster here, right? And sounds pretty simple, but you know, a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of just how common and simple this is. So let's see. Another technique is to use a gray paper. Or black paper and draw with white paint, not an eraser necessarily, but it's drawing in a negative mode, from white to black instead of black to white. And just like the example I had showed a little while ago of the high contrast figure, which is like high contrast photography, those pictures were basically drawn without any layouts or anything, just improvising the lighting, like so. So anyway, that's kind of the key, you know, keep things interesting. Another one is cloud painting, which is kind of like taking these abstracts and seeing an image in them. See, if I see crows in this, someone else might see something completely different. If I turn it upside down, now you've got something else completely different. And if you see something in here and begin drawing over it, I've done many, many pieces like that. So another thing about the grid is that there's another method, which is thirds, right? And basically, you could still put diagonals and all these other lines in it, but the thirds gives you the power zone right here. So if you make things, if you put them on the edges of the power zone, then you're going to get more visual interest, because there again, you don't want to be sending people to the corners of the picture. Basically, whatever's in the corners here, you don't want to put anything important there for the most part, because that's not where you want to send the eye. You want to send it to somewhere, you know, central to the picture. So anyway, I'll leave it there for now.